homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta. Next, we will discuss the Platform Sutra. We are currently on the 7th chapter, the chapter on opportunities. This chapter recounts the koans of many great masters. It discusses how to attain enlightenment and how to understand the profound essence of the Buddha Dharma. Today, we will discuss a monk named Bhikshu Zhidao, a native of Nanhai in Guangzhou, asked for instruction. I have read the Nirvana Sutra for over 10 years since becoming a monk, yet I have not grasped its main meaning. I beg the High Master to teach me. Zen Master Zhidao was from the Nanhai area of Guangzhou. He went to the 6th Patriarch to ask for advice. I, a student, have had great faith in practice and the Dharma since becoming a monk. He had been reading the Mahaparinirvana Sutra for over a decade. The nun Wujin Chang, mentioned earlier, also read the Nirvana Sutra. In the Han region, many people studied this sutra. Historically, in the Han region, many great masters and accomplished practitioners studied sutras like the Diamond Sutra, Nirvana Sutra, Shurangama Sutra, or the Sutra of Perfect Enlightenment. Through these various scriptures, they attained enlightenment. So for us students, especially some students of Tibetan Buddhism today who come to Tibetan areas, study a few treatises and then claim that Tibetan treatises are superior while Han classics are inferior. You should be careful with such statements. Otherwise, the deeds of great accomplished masters and their rare stories of enlightenment are beyond our ordinary speculation. If you look at the biographies of eminent monks or the continued biographies, you will see that they attained different realizations after studying various sutras. Even today, many people read these sutras. Due to the incredible blessings of the scriptures and their own faith, along with some guidance from their masters, there are indeed quite a few who have realized the nature of the mind. Here it says Zen Master Zhidao had studied the Nirvana Sutra for over 10 years, but he did not understand its true meaning. So he came specifically to ask for instruction today. I beg the 6th Patriarch, Master Huineng, to bestow your teachings upon me. The Master asked, "What part do you not understand?" The 6th Patriarch asked him which part of the Nirvana Sutra he did not comprehend. Zen Master Zhidao replied as follows. All activities are impermanent. This is the law of arising and ceasing. When arising and ceasing are extinguished, the quietude of extinction is bliss. I am doubtful about this. The main point he didn't understand is a specific passage in the Nirvana Sutra. All activities are impermanent. They are phenomena of arising and ceasing. When arising and ceasing are extinguished, that is the Dharma of quiescent extinction, the state of the Buddha, the great bliss. He was very confused by this principle. We will explain why later. I seem to recall mentioning this koan when I was teaching words of my perfect teacher. This story is found in the 14th scroll of the Nirvana Sutra. This verse is extremely important, and I hope everyone will reflect on it. At that time, Zen Master Zhidao did not understand its meaning. We who are here today might not fully understand it either. However, on a literal level, it doesn't seem difficult to grasp. All activities and all phenomena are impermanent. This primarily refers to the truth of suffering. What is the cause of impermanence? It is the nature of arising and ceasing. The nature of impermanence is that whatever arises must cease. It is a law of birth and death. In our worldly life, everything is also subject to arising and ceasing. This is not just in Buddhist practice. For example, the physical universe and the world of sentient beings are all impermanent. Furthermore, our human status, our mental states, and so on, are all exceptionally impermanent. For instance, when we first meet someone, we might be very respectful and delighted, but after a while things change. This applies to many worldly relationships and emotions. A while ago someone said they had found their soulmate and were enjoying the greatest happiness. Another Dharma teacher at our academy heard about this. While we were discussing this, it was quite a specific topic, he asked, "Is that really happiness? Let's see how they are in 6 months." I think this remark is quite meaningful. Therefore, everything in the world has a sense of impermanence. For example, consider Bo Xilai, the former party secretary of Chongqing. I saw a recent photo of him, and it really shows impermanence. Comparing his former status with his recent photo in the Jinan court, this is just worldly news, but it is true. From his facial expression to his entire life's actions, this is impermanence. However, from the perspective of Buddha Dharma, this has deeper significance. All worldly phenomena are impermanent. This impermanence of all things is the truth of suffering. Why is it impermanent? The root cause of the truth of suffering is the truth of accumulation, the cause behind arising and ceasing. The first two lines describe these two truths. When arising and ceasing are extinguished refers to using the truth of the path to eliminate them. What appears after this extinction? The quietude of extinction is bliss. This is the truth of cessation. That is to say, through the practice of the truth of the path, all arising and ceasing vanish. Arising and ceasing are completely gone. This doesn't mean nothingness as people often describe it today. It is the manifestation of the true essence of the Tathagata Garbha, which is called great bliss. It is not the ordinary pleasure of the physical body. For instance, in the Abhidharmakosha, pleasure from the five senses is called physical pleasure. Happiness from the consciousness is called mental pleasure. But this is different. Such mental pleasure is still within the realm of contaminated phenomena. This bliss is great bliss, a wisdom free from all attachment. It is immutable and beyond impermanence. I believe everyone here should have some understanding of this principle. I hope this verse can be inscribed in every Dharma center. It carries immense blessings. When the Buddha was on the causal ground, this was known as the Himalayan verse. It was the teaching he sought when he was the Himalayan youth. In the 7th chapter of the White Lotus, The Quest for the Dharma, which I translated, this is the first story. It is a very moving tale. It is also found in the Nirvana Sutra. The version in the Buddha's biographies is a bit more detailed. The version in the Chinese translation of the Nirvana Sutra is slightly more concise. Many of you here have probably learned this story, haven't you? When Shakyamuni Buddha was on the causal ground, he was a Brahmin named the Himalayan Youth. At that time, it seems no Buddha had appeared in the world yet. But from a young age, he deeply yearned to find the Mahayana Dharma. He searched everywhere but found nothing. His aspiration to seek the Dharma was incredibly strong. Once, while he was meditating in a forest, Indra, king of the gods, wished to test his resolve. He transformed into a hideous Rakshasa and appeared before him. As the youth was in deep meditation, a voice rang out near him. It spoke the first two lines. All activities are impermanent. This is the law of arising and ceasing. Perhaps due to his past habits or the ripening of his virtuous roots, when he heard these first two lines, he received the Dharma deeply. It seems we might not share such a fortunate connection. When I said those lines just now, I noticed your expressions didn't change much. But when he heard them, he felt like someone falling off a cliff who had suddenly found a savior. Like a person parched for a long time finding a sweet spring. Like a person drowning who has reached a boat. Like a critically ill patient who has received a miraculous medicine. He felt incomparable joy. It was as if he had finally found a glimmer of hope for liberation from samsara. At that moment, he began to search for the source. He looked everywhere and found no one but the hideous Rakshasa. Then he thought to himself, could those words have come from the mouth of this ugly monster? Can a lotus grow from flames? Can pure water emerge from sunlight? It seems impossible. If such a sublime Dharma came from this Rakshasa, why hasn't his body transformed into something beautiful? He had a conflict in his thoughts. Later he realized, this is just my discrimination. I shouldn't think this way. Perhaps there's a reason for his hideous appearance. Since no one else is here, it must have been spoken by this Rakshasa. He then went before him and asked, was it you who spoke that Dharma just now? The Rakshasa said, I am just extremely hungry because I haven't eaten lately. I was just babbling to myself. I didn't say that. The youth insisted, it didn't sound like babbling at all. Because this verse is actually the teaching of many previous Buddhas. He said, this Dharma is most extraordinary. Could you teach me the rest of the verse? The Rakshasa replied, I am starving right now. The growling in my stomach is louder than thunder. I don't have time to chat. I must go elsewhere to find food. The youth asked, "What do you eat? I will do my best to provide it. Just please teach me the rest of the Dharma." The Rakshasa said, "If I told you what I eat, people like you would die of fright. I won't tell you." The Himalayan youth said, "There is no one else here, only me. Tell me your requirements. I will fulfill them. I won't die of fear." The Rakshasa then said, "I only eat fresh human flesh and drink fresh blood. That is the only way. But lately, because people here are practicing virtue, the celestial beings have been protecting them, and I can't get any human flesh. So I am in a pitiful state and cannot teach you the pure Dharma." The youth said, "By all means, please teach me this Dharma. Since time immemorial, I have wandered in the endless cycle of samsara. I have discarded my body countless times, but it was all without meaning or value. To receive such a sublime teaching this time, I am willing to offer my entire body as a meal for you. You must teach it to me." But the Rakshasa still refused, saying, "It would be a pity. It is not worth losing your entire life for just 2 lines of Dharma." The youth insisted repeatedly that it was very much worth it. He said, "It is like trading a broken clay shard for a golden vessel. Similarly, to attain the Vajra body of a Buddha, giving up this contaminated body of flesh and blood is nothing to regret. You must teach me. Once you do, I will fulfill my promise. I will give you my entire body as food." The Rakshasa then taught him the last 2 lines. "When arising and ceasing are extinguished, the quietude of extinction is bliss." The youth immediately felt that this complete 4-line verse was incredibly sublime. He inscribed it on rocks, on walls, on the roads, everywhere, including on pieces of paper. He hoped that many people would see and learn it. Then he climbed a tree, intending to leap to his death to fulfill his vow. In midair, Indra revealed his true form and caught him. By this act, he bypassed 12 kalpas of accumulating merit, attaining Buddhahood even before Maitreya Bodhisattva. Originally, Shakyamuni Buddha was meant to attain Buddhahood after Maitreya Bodhisattva. But because of his profound resolve and his aspiration in seeking the Dharma, he bypassed 12 great kalpas of merit and attained Buddhahood before Maitreya. This is exactly what is taught in this historical account. I hope those of us here today aren't just listening to this as if it were a simple story. While I was translating it in the past, I felt so deeply that these teachings are incredibly rare and precious. Even though none of us here today have been asked to sacrifice our bodies, nor have we had to give up the most precious things we own, it is through the lineage masters that this sublime Dharma has been brought to us. In the future, I hope that to repay the kindness of our great teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, we can remember that while he was on the causal ground, for the sake of countless sentient beings, he paid the ultimate price, sacrificing his own life and body many times over. He did this to bring us this supreme nectar of the Dharma. Starting today, it's very simple. We must make a vow. All activities are impermanent. This is the law of arising and ceasing. When arising and ceasing are extinguished, the quietude of extinction is bliss. I hope every class will print this verse in a larger font, handwrite it or print it, but it's best to post it where everyone can see it. In our Buddhist society, some people listen to me and some don't. I feel that within our academy there is certainly a group that follows my advice. If you don't listen, that's okay too. It's up to you. But in your individual practice centers, I hope you will do this as a sign of our reverence for the Buddha. We must think about the Dharma that Shakyamuni Buddha brought to us while on the causal ground and feel at least a sense of gratitude. As I was saying recently, no matter how eloquent a person is, or how wise, wealthy, capable, or talented they are, regardless of all that, without a heart of gratitude, life in this society isn't necessarily meaningful. I think this way because I want to repay the kindness of the lineage masters who gave us the Dharma, as well as our original teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, the 8 great bodhisattvas, and all the bodhisattvas and arhats of the 10 directions. We should regard this teaching as what is called, in the Tantric tradition, liberation through seeing and liberation through hearing. When Shakyamuni Buddha was on the causal ground, knowing his life was about to end, why did he write it on the walls? Why on the cliff faces? Why on the roads? Why on paper and post it everywhere? He was about to leave this world, but felt this was incredibly significant. Moreover, it is a summary of the Four Noble Truths by many Buddhas of the past. It carries a very special and supreme blessing. You might wonder why this is included in the Platform Sutra. It's not that these Zen masters had any doubts about this teaching, but they wanted to preserve it for future generations. They left us this wonderful opportunity to explore and connect with something so sublime. So I hope you will write it in your own homes and in your meditation rooms. These 4 lines are easy. We don't have to sacrifice our lives for them. Whether your handwriting is beautiful or messy, and some of you have worse handwriting than mine, just write it down and post it by your pillow or in your meditation room, or even in the kitchen where you cook every day and care about the most. While you eat and stir-fry, just take a look. All activities are impermanent. That works too, right? Many of our Dharma friends could do this. This is a hope of mine. When we learn a teaching, we should feel something toward those who came before us. When I was translating that biography back then, I felt it very strongly. When His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche taught the great biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, he also repeatedly mentioned this verse. It truly is our great fortune. Today, the Dharma remains in the world. We have met virtuous teachers, and we have a human life. In the midst of such wonderful conditions, many people might not see it as valuable. For example, would you rather receive this verse or $1,000? I'm certain 70 or 80% would choose the money and say they don't need the verse. That's how it often goes. This is the ignorance and delusion of sentient beings. So these 4 lines are the essence. Now the Zen master continues. I've added this explanation of the origins of the verse. When Zen master Zhidao was reading the Nirvana Sutra, he didn't understand this and had doubts. The master asked, "Why do you doubt it?" He said, "Why do you have doubts about this verse? It is a very well-written verse. There is nothing to doubt. It's quite simple on the surface, and the literal explanation is also very good. You've read it for 10 years, but still don't understand the meaning of these 4 lines. Why the doubt?" Next, Zen Master Zhidao explains his doubt. It's like some of our friends here whose questions are longer than the answers. He goes on to say quite a lot. Zhidao said, "All sentient beings have 2 bodies, the physical body and the Dharma body. The physical body is impermanent. It arises and ceases. The Dharma body is permanent, yet it has no knowledge or sensation. His doubt is this. The sutras say all sentient beings have 2 bodies, the physical body and the Dharma body. The physical body is impermanent. It is subject to birth and death. He thinks of the physical body like that of a Buddha, or an ordinary person, or any sentient being. It is our physical form which is born and will die. However, he believes the Dharma body is beyond birth and death, permanent, and yet has no awareness or feeling. He views the Dharma body as something inanimate, like an insentient object, permanent but unaware. The sutra says, when arising and ceasing are extinguished, the quietude of extinction is bliss. But I do not know which body is in extinction and which body experiences bliss. If it is the physical body, when it is extinguished, the 4 elements scatter. This is entirely suffering, and suffering cannot be called bliss. If it is the Dharma body that is extinguished, it becomes like grass, trees, tiles, or stones. Who then experiences bliss? His question is this. The sutra says, when arising and ceasing are extinguished, the quietude of extinction is bliss. He says if arising and ceasing are gone, and extinction is bliss, then there's the concept of bliss and the concept of extinction. So which one is extinguished, the physical body or the Dharma body? And which one experiences bliss, the physical body or the Dharma body? In truth, if he understood ultimate and conventional truth, or the Four Noble Truths, he wouldn't ask this. The physical body and the Dharma body cannot actually be separated, as we'll see in the answer. If you think of the physical body as impermanent and having form, and the Dharma body as formless and permanent, to have both permanent and impermanent in one being would certainly be a contradiction. He failed to distinguish between ultimate reality and appearances. For instance, if you don't clearly understand the appearance of a vase versus its true essence, The essence of the vase is emptiness, while its appearance is an accumulation of particles. Thus, they would seem completely contradictory. Many who haven't studied the middle way likely harbor this same doubt. They wonder, regarding these Buddhist teachings, who is actually experiencing this? Which body is in bliss? Which one is extinguished and which one is blissful? He then pushes this logic to an extreme. He argues that if it's the physical body, when it dies, the four elements simply scatter. Since that's incredibly painful, how could it be bliss? Suffering cannot be called bliss. There's no bliss there. When the physical body eventually perishes, the four elements decompose. When the elements decompose, every being suffers. Where is the joy in that? How can extinction be bliss? When everything is extinguished, it's not bliss. And if you say it's the Dharma body that is extinguished, it would be like grass, trees, tiles, or rubble. The Dharma body would have no feeling, no sensation, and no perception. He views it as an insentient object, but the Dharma body is not insentient, nor is it something like a lifeless object devoid of all experience. From a worldly perspective, one might ask this. That was his first question. Some of our Dharma friends often raise similar points, especially those who haven't studied the middle way or the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. They often feel that certain Buddhist principles seem illogical. They often use their discursive minds to argue this. That was his first concern. He continued, furthermore, Dharmata is the essence of arising and ceasing, while the five aggregates are its function. He believes that Dharmata, or the Dharma body, is the essence behind arising and ceasing, and that the five aggregates are its wonderful function. From one essence come five functions, thus arising and ceasing are permanent. He thinks there is a single essence, the Dharma body he just mentioned, acting as the core. The five functions refer to the physical body, which is subject to arising and ceasing. If you combine the two, arising and ceasing would then be permanent. Since it's inseparable from the Dharma body, how could it not be permanent? Arising is the function emerging from the essence. Ceasing is the function returning to it. Why is that? It's like the waves of the ocean. Arising comes from the essence of the Dharma body, and ceasing eventually returns to that same essence. If rebirth is permitted, sentient beings would continue without end. If rebirth is not permitted, they would return to eternal extinction, like insentient objects. He said that if this cycle of arising and ceasing continues uninterrupted, sentient beings would be endless, becoming essentially permanent. But if there were no future lives and the process did not continue, everything would be eternally extinguished, like an insentient object. It would be total annihilation. Nothing would remain. In this way, all phenomena would be suppressed by nirvana, unable to even arise. What bliss could there be? So, if all things are subject to nirvana, viewed here as a kind of total extinction, it would mean nirvana binds and controls everything, making it impossible for anything to ever arise. By this logic, neither arising nor non-arising works. If nothing arises, it is essentially extinct. If it's extinct and bound by nirvana, nothing can ever be produced again. If nothing is produced, what bliss could possibly exist? There would be none. His first question was, who is extinguished and who attains bliss? His second question was, if the Dharma body and physical body are one essence with five wonderful functions, and these two are merged as one, then once the five functions dissolve into the Dharma body, everything is extinguished. After such extinction, how could there be bliss? He is interpreting bliss here as a kind of pleasant sensation within the discursive mind. However, the great bliss in Buddhism, the wisdom bliss of a Buddha, is absolutely not the pleasure we feel. It is not a discursive happiness. So he could not accept it in this context. Next, after hearing all these questions, the sixth patriarch replied, in modern terms, we wouldn't need to spend so much time. We could just say it directly. Classical Chinese is quite a bit more work, but your classical Chinese is probably quite good. I only understood it after studying it in detail. You likely won't have that problem. The master said, you are a disciple of the Buddha. Why do you hold the deviant views of nihilism and eternalism to debate the supreme vehicle? Master Huineng was a bit displeased and said, You appear to be a disciple of Shakyamuni Buddha, so why are you using the non-Buddhist views of eternalism and nihilism to debate the essential teachings of the Nirvana Sutra, the supreme vehicle of Buddhism? You still have non-Buddhist tendencies. Have you been spending a lot of time with non-Buddhists lately? You seem to be a Zen master. Indeed, in some non-Buddhist traditions, their concepts of permanence and nihilism act as their method of analysis. He addressed this directly. According to you, there is a Dharma body apart from the physical body, and you seek extinction by leaving arising and ceasing. You infer that the bliss of nirvana implies a body that experiences it. This is to be attached to birth and death, and to be obsessed with worldly pleasure. Based on what you've said, you believe that beyond the physical body, there is a separate Dharma body. You think that after leaving arising and ceasing, one attains a kind of extinction. Furthermore, you infer that the so-called eternal bliss of nirvana implies some kind of enjoyment. All of this is just an attachment to birth and death and an obsession with current worldly pleasures. This is an excellent answer. Regarding the questions raised above, one is that you believe the Dharma body exists separately from the physical body and vice versa. You view nirvana or extinction through the lens of pleasant sensations and worldly attachments. In that case, you certainly cannot penetrate the true meaning. You should know that for the sake of all deluded people, who mistake the union of the five aggregates for their own self, and who differentiate all phenomena as external objects, they crave life and loathe death, drifting from thought to thought, unaware that all is a false dream. He said, "You ought to know that." Buddha taught the Dharma to deluded beings, primarily focusing on two aspects. First, he wanted beings to realize they attach to the union of the five aggregates as a self. That's how many of us are. It is an internal attachment to me. Second, there is an attachment to external appearances, differentiating sights, sounds, smells, and tastes. Because of this, they wish to remain in the world and loathe dying, constantly drifting in this cycle. They have no idea that our world is like a dream or an illusion. Utterly infatuated, they pointlessly endure samsara. In fact, sentient beings are truly unaware of the many sufferings in this world. Many people today think, "I'm quite happy, I'm doing well." Shantideva also says in The Way of the Bodhisattva, though samsara is extreme suffering, due to delusion, one is unaware of it. Sentient beings are already drowning in a sea of suffering. It is quite tragic. It is because they lack true right view and mindfulness. They do not fully understand the truth of the world. Therefore, these beings continue to accept and be obsessed with samsara. Mistaking the eternal bliss of nirvana for a state of suffering, they pursue worldly pleasures all day long. Out of compassion for them, the Buddha revealed the true joy of nirvana. Regarding the nirvana of eternal bliss, many sentient beings in our world today regard it as a form of suffering. They spend their days chasing mundane happiness and worldly comforts. Seeing the vast number of beings so deluded and so deeply attached to this life, the Buddha revealed to everyone the true path to nirvana. The true path to nirvana is actually what we call liberation, being free from all afflictions. It is also stated in the Nirvana Sutra. The extinguishing of all afflictions is called nirvana. Being free from all existence is called nirvana. Nirvana carries two meanings. One is the state where all afflictions have been distanced. In Tibetan, the term nyangde can mean quiescence, but it can also refer to passing away. Another meaning is being free from the three realms of existence. Affliction is the cause, existence is the result. Being free from the three realms means no longer falling into samsara. This is also called nirvana. So nirvana has these two meanings. The Buddha revealed the truth of nirvana to everyone, which is this sublime teaching of being free from afflictions and the cycle of existence. For those of us here seeking the Dharma every day, what is our purpose? It is for each of us to find our own true nature. Although everyone possesses the reality of Buddha nature, it is obscured by the delusion of ignorance. One doesn't need to be told this by others. When you contemplate deeply on your own, you can feel it. Through your own meditation, you will come to understand there is not a moment of arising nor a moment of ceasing. There is no more arising and ceasing to be extinguished. This is the manifestation of quiescence. At the moment of manifestation, there is no measure of manifestation. This is called eternal bliss. Regarding what is called eternal bliss, we should all understand that quiescence is bliss. The bliss in this context is not actually something like, oh, I had a delicious meal today. I'm so happy. I'm basking in the sun in a solarium today. It's so comfortable and joyful. I met a very lovely person today. I'm so happy. This kind of happiness is actually tainted. The moment you speak of it, it's already gone. Some say, I have wealth and power now. I'm happy, but it becomes impermanent in an instant. What does the Buddha's true happiness, great bliss and eternal bliss, really mean? Essentially, there is not a moment of arising nor a moment of ceasing. In the true essence of all phenomena, there isn't even a moment of arising or a moment of ceasing. The absence of arising and ceasing is true quiescence. This is also taught in Entering the Middle Way. When such quiescence manifests, that is actually eternal bliss. Right now, arising and ceasing occur moment by moment. They are constantly emerging in our bodies and minds within the relative world. When you reach a certain level of realization, all this arising, ceasing, living, and dying completely vanish. They do not exist within the true nature. Reaching this state is the true eternal bliss. At this point, there is nothing to be accepted or rejected between samsara and nirvana. Bhavaviveka also stated in his Prajnapradipa, one should not abandon birth and death, nor should one establish nirvana. Birth and death and nirvana are non-dual and without distinction. A very similar verse can be found in the root stanzas of the Middle Way and the Beacon of Certainty. This sentence is also in the Han Chinese translation of Prajnapradipa. Please remember it. Therefore, when arising and ceasing, samsara and nirvana, are seen as non-dual and without distinction, this is the true reality of the Dharma. In this bliss, there is no one who experiences it, nor is there anyone who does not experience it. How can there be the concept of one essence and five functions? Much less saying that nirvana suppresses all phenomena, preventing them from ever arising. This is slandering the Buddha and the Dharma. Listen to my verse. In the true ultimate reality, there is no one experiencing bliss, nor anyone not experiencing it. Since both bliss and its absence are non-existent, how could there be a one essence and five functions? It's not as he asked earlier about it being one essence and five functions. If this concept of one essence and five functions does not exist, where does the idea of all phenomena being bound and controlled by nirvana come from? It is even more absurd and cannot be established. We should understand this. If all phenomena do not exist in their true nature, how could nirvana control them? Such a statement is illogical and completely slanders the Buddha and the Dharma. It is illogical when applied to the ultimate reality. Indeed, the principles the sixth Patriarch teaches here are very profound. Then he spoke a verse. The supreme great nirvana is perfect, bright, eternally quiescent and illuminating. Ordinary fools call it death. Non-Buddhists cling to it as nihilism. Regarding supreme great nirvana, as it was said before, profound, peaceful, free from elaborations, luminous and unconditioned. It is perfect, luminous, eternal, and quiescent. It can illuminate everything. True supreme nirvana does not mean that the Buddha has simply, in fact, Shakyamuni Buddha manifesting nirvana was only a display for those who perceive pleasure, pain, and permanence. True nirvana means reaching a fundamental state. For example, when a master enters nirvana, we also say they have passed into quiescence. It doesn't mean they are extinguished, dead, or gone. But to ordinary people, oh, the Buddha has left the world, the master has died, and so on. They would say things like that. Non-Buddhists, especially the Lokayata, view it as total annihilation. A person is alive, then dead. The Buddha was alive, then extinguished. Extinction to them is nihilism, nothingness like a lamp going out. Actually, such a view is quite pitiful. One cannot attain liberation through it. The view of nihilism is very terrifying. There is also a story in the Nirvana Sutra. Once, the Buddha went to the Niranjana river accompanied by Ananda. He said to Venerable Ananda, I wish to bathe in the Nairanjana river. Go and get my robes and the bath powder, the equivalent of modern toiletries. By the river at that time there were many birds and other sentient beings. There were also 500 Brahmins and 500 sages who had come there together. While the Buddha was bathing, they saw that his physical form was extremely magnificent. When the 500 sages saw this, they felt immense joy and said, "Such a magnificent Vajra-like form is truly inconceivable." Some non-Buddhists said at the time, if the Buddha had not taught us the path of nihilism, we would still observe the fasting rituals and precepts before him today. When they approached the Buddha, he knew through his power of reading minds. On what grounds do you say I teach nihilism? How can you say such a thing? Later the sages said to him, have you not proclaimed selflessness and emptiness everywhere in many sutras? If it is selflessness and emptiness, then whatever precepts we keep or break, it would all come to nothing. So we are quite concerned today. If you teach us emptiness, we will not seek the Dharma. But if you do not speak of emptiness, we would still like to seek the precepts and so forth before you. At that time, the Buddha said, I have never taught all sentient beings that only non-self exists. Rather, I say that all beings possess Buddha nature, and this Buddha nature is the existence of the self. After the Buddha taught this Dharma door, followers of other paths and even animals came to listen to him. After the Buddha shared these teachings with them, some attained the fruits of realization, while others gave birth to the sublime, irreversible bodhicitta. Others planted exceptionally wondrous roots of virtue. Later, when summarizing these accounts in the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha spoke like this. Regarding Buddha nature, if we use the word self to describe it, strictly speaking, calling Buddha nature the self isn't entirely accurate. However, for the benefit of sentient beings, it can be referred to as the self. All of us here should keep this in mind. If someone asks, doesn't Buddhism teach emptiness and that the self doesn't exist? Based on the meaning of the Nirvana Sutra, we can respond, we never said that. The self does exist. In fact, Buddhism emphasizes the self most of all. Buddha nature, or Tathagata Garbha, is exactly what we mean by self. You can explain it to others this way. At first they might believe Tathagata Garbha truly is a self. If they think like that, they'll feel, I can take refuge and seek the Dharma. Then step by step they attain realization. Once they reach that realization, you can bring them back to the deeper truth. I told you Tathagata Garbha was the self before, but in reality it isn't. In fact, as long as they attain liberation, the method doesn't matter. There is a slight nuance between Tathagata Garbha and the self, but the Buddha gave permission for this teaching in the Nirvana Sutra. This is also a very skillful way of guiding people. In the ultimate sense, the Buddha certainly never taught nihilism. When discussing cause and effect, Gateway to Knowledge describes 6 special characteristics between cause and result. That's a very sublime topic, but we don't have time to go into it here. Those seeking the 2 vehicles think of it as non-doing, but all these are purely mental projections, the source of 62 views. Arbitrarily establishing false names. How can this be the true meaning? This says those who seek the 2 vehicles of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas think it's all non-doing, non-self, or nothingness. In truth, this so-called mere emptiness, non-doing, or non-self is just a type of conceptual projection. This also falls into the 62 views. This is found in Entering the Middle Way, as well as in other commentaries on the Platform Sutra. There are 62 non-Buddhist views in total. If you calculate based on the views of the 5 aggregates, the supported and the supporter, it's 60, plus eternalism and nihilism. It should be calculated that way. In reality, if we fixate on non-self and non-doing as absolute truths, then that becomes the very root of the 62 deviant views of non-Buddhists. Moreover, these are all just false labels established by conceptual thought. How could they be called the true meaning? They are not the ultimate reality. Only the one who has transcended worldly means of knowledge can thoroughly understand there is nothing to take or reject, for they know the five aggregates and the self within them, manifesting externally as all forms and every sound. All are equal, like a dream or an illusion. They do not give rise to views of ordinary or holy, nor do they form a conceptual understanding of nirvana. Both extremes and the three times are cut off. Only the one who has transcended worldly means of knowledge. This refers to realized masters or practitioners who have surpassed ordinary worldly means of knowledge. They completely understand the meaning of no accepting and no rejecting. From the perspective of this view, they fully realize that the self as a collection of the five aggregates. The five aggregates themselves are not the self, and there is no self to be found within them. Regarding external phenomena, including forms and all appearances, as well as sounds and so on, they view everything equally as a dream or an illusion, giving rise to no distinction between holy or ordinary, nor do they cling to a conceptual view of some perfectly pure nirvana. In this way, the extremes of eternalism and nihilism, as well as past, present, and future, everything related to both extremes and the three times, is cut off. In this state, just as it's described in the root stanzas of the Middle Way, there is no more discrimination, no more taking or rejecting. Only someone who truly has realization can see this. For someone without realization, everything from dualistic grasping to taking and rejecting still exists. Things aren't equal or like a dream to them. There's still a huge gap between like a dream and how we experience reality. To truly understand this dreamlike nature, I recall once, perhaps at the Chinese University of Hong Kong or somewhere else, I personally tried to connect the themes of the Matrix with what is taught in the Buddhist sutras about everything being like a dream or an illusion. I used my conceptual mind to analyze it, and during that process, I felt I gained some insights by bridging the Dharma with worldly phenomena. Actually, in today's society, we occasionally need this kind of worldly perspective. See, as soon as I mention worldly things, you all perk up. Just a moment ago, some were about to fall asleep. The Matrix. The word hacker originally means to strike or crash. The title The Matrix used overseas refers to a womb or a source. Nor do they form a conceptual understanding of nirvana. You can analyze this yourself. The senses are always in use, yet there is no thought of using. All things are distinguished, yet there is no thought of distinguishing. When one finally attains true realization, even though all the senses are used continuously, in reality, no conceptual thoughts arise. The senses are utilized, but without clinging to the idea of use. Such a person will distinguish all phenomena, worldly and beyond samsara and nirvana, yet will not give rise to any discriminatory thoughts. It may seem like we are saying, emptiness is the absence of attachment, and emptiness means no appearance manifests. Appearance is emptiness, and emptiness is appearance, or distinguishing all things while not distinguishing anything. Doesn't that sound a bit contradictory? In fact, there is no contradiction at all. For instance, as stated in the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, without giving rise to discriminatory thoughts, they mature beings of the past, present, and future. Transforming sentient beings everywhere, they constantly manifest through the three doors. This means that while they do not give rise to any discriminatory thoughts, they can still mature all sentient beings of the future and the past. When one attains the state of a bodhisattva or a Buddha, they do not think, in the past I have matured and liberated these beings. Now I am maturing and liberating this being, and in the future I will mature and liberate those beings. They don't have such discriminatory thoughts, yet the Buddha is everywhere. In any moment throughout the past, present, and future, he is maturing them, liberating them, and saving them. This is the unique quality of a Buddha. To us ordinary people, we might wonder, how can one do anything without thinking? In fact, it is possible. Take a wish-fulfilling jewel or tree, for example. They have no discriminatory thoughts, yet they can still fulfill needs. Similarly, for many great realized masters who achieve immense activities, they don't necessarily wake up every day thinking, I must save beings, I must save beings. They don't cry all day when they can't reach someone. What if I can't save them? No one listens to me anymore. What if all my disciples run away? There's no need to cry like that. And after helping someone, they don't need to constantly mention it on different occasions. It happens naturally. All sentient beings, it's a state of non-discrimination, yet they are saved within the manifestation of discrimination. This is the realization of a bodhisattva. For us, however, it still seems a bit inconceivable, but there are likely many states that are beyond our conception. We shouldn't assume that we understand everything. The truth is we don't. If you really knew everything, you'd know exactly how many hairs are on your head or how many atoms are in your body. What is your state of mind exactly at this moment? Just try to understand your own condition from recently, or try to gauge the state of mind of the person closest to you. You won't have a clue. In the Tibetan areas, we have a saying, a tiger's stripes are on the outside, but a person's stripes are on the inside. No matter how hard you try to understand the mind of someone familiar, you just can't know. Though the fires at the end of the eon burn the seabed and gales drive mountains to crash against each other, the bliss of true, eternal and quiescent extinction remains. Such is the nature of nirvana. This speaks to the ultimate reality of all phenomena. What is this ultimate reality like? When the fires at the end of the kalpa appear, the mountains, rivers, and even the great oceans will all dry up. When the winds at the end of the eon arise, the great mountain kings will all crash and collide into one another. Even if things become like that, this true, eternal, and quiescent bliss will never change. No matter how the environment changes, this bliss remains constant. Whether we live or die, attain realization or fall into samsara, the nature of phenomena never changes. The nature of all things remains as it is, whether a Buddha appears in the world or not. Some translations say, remains as it is, while others say, stays eternally without change. Yes, that's exactly right. The nature of all phenomena, whether a Tathagata appears in the world or not, remains forever the same, unchanging and constant. No matter how much the world undergoes earth-shattering transformations, our true nature, our Buddha nature, should remain unshakable. I once read Venerable Yanpei's commentary on the Platform Sutra. In it, he quoted the Lotus Sutra. When sentient beings see the eon's end, consumed by a great fire, this land of mine remains peaceful, ever filled with gods and humans. This pure land of mine is always stable and never decays, and it's always filled with gods and humans. Even if the whole world is destroyed, it remains full of celestial beings. The point of quoting this was to show that no matter how the world changes, our Buddha nature and suchness never change. At the end of his explanation, he spoke directly of the principles found in the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. I use these words now to compel you to abandon your wrong views. Do not interpret this through the literal words alone, and you may gain a little understanding. Finally, the sixth patriarch said, I have tried to use words and various metaphors to explain the true reality of all Buddhas to you. But my main purpose is to help you dispel your wrong views, your non-Buddhist biases, nihilism and eternalism. To clear them away one by one, that is my goal. At the same time, I hope you won't just follow my words. Don't be like someone who only looks at the finger instead of the moon it points to. Don't cling solely to my literal phrasing to understand. If you do this, I can say that perhaps you will have some realization of Mahayana Buddhism and Prajnaparamita. If you really follow what I said, by not clinging to words and understanding from the underlying meaning, you might gain an understanding of the true Tathagata Garbha and emptiness. For us sitting here, there should be a huge difference between those who study and those who don't. For someone who has never studied the Dharma, it's just like what Master Zhidao asked. Permanence is wrong, and impermanence is also wrong. In fact, this permanence and impermanence are quite different from our Buddhist teaching that quiescence is bliss. Upon hearing this verse, Zhidao attained great enlightenment. Full of joy, he made obeisance and withdrew. When Master Zhidao heard the verse of the sixth patriarch really spoke with effortless wisdom. That's how an enlightened one is. He would just naturally start singing Vajra songs. After hearing it, the disciple, who had great aptitude, felt immense joy instead of wrong views. His disciples seemed to attain enlightenment every time they heard his teachings. Perhaps only the cases of those who attained enlightenment were recorded, and those who didn't were left out, right? In the end, everyone made obeisance and withdrew. This is a very good koan. After learning these verses, we should keep them in our hearts to some extent. Our aptitude may differ from those Zen masters, but in terms of our connection, we have also encountered this sublime Dharma door. Since we have this connection, we should practice and contemplate it regularly. All right, let's stop here for today.
Bandara Banma Sadar